Brics is reshaping the global economy, with Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa collaborating to challenge Western dominance. South Africa's role is crucial as it bridges the gap between emerging markets and developed nations. Meanwhile, the concepts of Nesara and Gesara promise sweeping financial reforms, aiming to eliminate debt and redistribute wealth. While these ideas spark debate, they reflect a growing desire for economic justice. As South Africa navigates its own challenges, from energy crises to social issues, the interplay of these global movements could redefine its future. The world is watching closely. BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are stepping up to implement Nesara Gesara, a revolutionary economic reform plan. Imagine a global financial reset where our current fiat currency is replaced with a gold-backed system. This means debt forgiveness for individuals, corporations, and even nations. The quantum financial system will utilize blockchain technology for transparency and security, ensuring that wealth is redistributed fairly. This could end debt slavery and usher in a new era of financial freedom, benefiting everyone, not just the elite. A global currency reset could finally reflect true value, transforming the economy for the better. Donald Trump hasn't officially confirmed that Nesara Gesara will kick in on January 1, 2026, but some sources claim he did announce it. This framework promises major economic changes, like debt forgiveness for individuals and corporations, and a complete overhaul of our financial system, possibly even a return to a gold-backed currency. Imagine a global currency reset that could redistribute wealth and eradicate poverty. Proponents believe this could lead to unprecedented financial freedom and transparency, releasing suppressed technologies. Yet, it's crucial to remember that many view Nesara Gesara as a conspiracy theory, with no solid evidence backing it up. The debate continues, leaving us to wonder, could this be a path to prosperity or just another illusion? Lieutenant General Nailanla Mkhwanazi is shaking things up in KwaZulu-Natal. He's made serious allegations against high-profile figures, claiming they've violated intelligence laws and interfered with crime operations. He even linked businessman Brown Magotsi to suspended Police Minister Senzo Mchunu, raising eyebrows about policing independence. Mkhwanazi defended his military-style uniform at a press briefing, stating it symbolizes the severe threats facing the SAPs. Plus, he's taking action against those who tried to block investigations into corruption in Gauteng. His explosive testimony at the Madlanga Commission is revealing deep-rooted issues in law enforcement, pushing for transparency and accountability.
And there are bills going through in America that will put sanctions on individuals in South Africa. Putting the tariffs aside, it's quite damaging to all of us. There's this SDN sanctions Congressman Ronnie Jackson bill that is going to go through Congress, go through Senate, and it's got bipartisan support, Democrats and Republicans.
Are these the sanctions towards ANC leaders?
Yes.
Members, yeah.
Yeah.
Like which guys? Which guys?
Oh, just name them. Cyril, Gwede, Becky, Naledi Pandor. I mean, it's just read the Zondo Commission.
So they're targeting
They're targeting them. And you know what they do? Asset freeze, travel bans. You know, Julius won't be able to go to Ibiza anymore.
Julius is in there, so.
Of course he is. Hate speech, criminality. Just read the Zondo Commission. All the people mentioned in there.
Lala was the small guy in the Horsh syndicate and this Horsh curry enterprise. There are bigger fish in this pond, and one in particular is of great interest. In fact, it's so amazing because since I made that last episode on Wednesday, so much has happened in respect to this particular individual. Just in the media reporting, I don't know if they watched my episode and then made developments happen or if those were going to happen. It was just coincidence. But there is a man whose full picture we don't even have. I mean, you can look at all of the Googles, the encyclopedias, the Instagrams. There is no picture of this man. I actually had to ask ChatGPT and Grok to make an image based on side profiles and little drawings that exist of his representation or image. This is what ChatGPT thinks he looks like. It's actually quite curious that with all these media houses, ENCA, Newsroom Africa, Business Day, Daily Maverick, Amabungane, and these NGOs like Corruption Watch, all of those were involved in selling us the dream of a new dawn. All of those media publications which were very earnest in getting the Guptas to be held to account and speaking about state capture, they have not been able to give us a picture or a video of this man. So interesting. I mean, do you remember Khulubuse Zuma? He's the nephew of Jacob Zuma. And in the Zuma years, his photo was everywhere. The media took time to make his name and his businesses famous, one of which I think was Aurora Mine. So how come the media hasn't been able to do the same about this particular man, who seems to me to be one of the senior people in all of these shenanigans we've been hearing about? He seems to be significantly senior. So who is this man? His name is Hangwani Morgan Maumela, and he is the nephew of Cyril Ramaphosa through his first marriage. That's important. This connection is potentially, I think, the reason why the media is not so enthusiastic to talk about him. The president himself has said he does not know Hangwani Maumela, and that may very well be true. But one of the people very close to the president knows him quite well, that man being Benjani Chauke. And that's according to the reporting from News 24. In this video, I'm going to use some information from this book here, The Shadow State by Jeff Weeks. And it covers a lot of why certain things have been happening and gives some theories as to who are the people who have been involved in those things. So today we're talking about Hangwani Morgan Maumela. Some key background that you need to keep in mind. Cyril Ramaphosa was married to Hope Mudau in 1978. And Basil Mudau is Hope Mudau's brother. Okay? So remember that. Cyril Ramaphosa was married to Hope Mudau in 1978, and Basil Mudau is Hope Mudau's brother. Now, Hangwani Morgan Maumela, aged 41 at the time of this recording, he is in the business of government tenders. One of his biggest clients, where his company's made over 400 million rands, is the Tembisa Hospital, where Babita Deokaran worked and the reason why she was assassinated for stopping some payments which she identified as suspicious payments to companies which included 9 companies which were owned by Morgan Maumela. So his father is Basil Mudau. Remember, Cyril Ramaphosa was married to Hope Mudau in 1978. Basil Mudau is Hope Mudau's brother. And Basil Mudau is the father of Morgan Maumela. His mother is Mboneni Maumela. And she's a very interesting character in all of this because it seems as if she taught him the game and that they are still in business together to this day. His mother was a director at the Limpopo Health Department, and she worked there for 2 decades, from 2001 up until 2021. And she apparently is a very wealthy woman, according to the reports. So my theory, and having read up on this scandal, it seems as if that she's the one who taught him the tender game in Limpopo, and that her son then took the business model to Gauteng and potentially to other places, because we don't actually know how extensive Morgan Maumela's empire is, even with all of the developments that have played out. So according to his father, on page 164 of this book right here, I'm even giving you page references. If you get the book, just skip to page 164, you'll get some of the tea. According to his father on page 164, Morgan Maumela started working in Polokwane doing tenders. The book says that he then became an influential figure at Tembisa Hospital in respect to the supply chain. A source at the hospital told Jeff Weeks that he was always at the hospital, that he was often spotted at the supply chain management offices, that Hangwani was the one who seemed to be the Don operating at the hospital. The report indicates that he supplied the Tembisa Hospital from 2018 up until much later when Babita stopped the payments. And if you think about 2018, that's about the time when Cyril Ramaphosa came into power. Think about it. He wasn't supplying them in 2017. He rose at around about the same time that President Cyril Ramaphosa rose. So part of the theories around this is that he may have been using the president's name and his family connection without necessarily people higher up knowing. The other theory is that actually people higher up would have known what he was up to and what he was doing. It's very unlikely that people higher up would not have come across somebody using, his connection or proximity to a particular surname, or using that surname to get political favors and connections. So, that's still out for the jury to determine in terms of the commission, the ad hoc committee. Maybe they will get to the bottom of how exactly did Morgan Maumela become the tender don at Tembisa Hospital in 2018? What would have made him have authority to go to the supply chain management office and dictate orders and say, this is who must get a contract, this is who mustn't get a contract, etc. So according to the research, the reporting, the book, it seems as if a large part of the wealth that Morgan Maumela accumulated came from the Gauteng Department of Health hospitals. Right? It's not just the Tembisa hospital. It seems as if he was also doing hoshkari behavior with other hospitals. That wealth that he accumulated was then managed through a family trust. So there's a family trust which is known as the MHR Maumela Family Trust. That MHR stands for Mboneni, his mother's name, Hangwani, his name, Rumani. So it's mother, son, and sister. So Rumani is the sister. And the trust was founded in 2016, before the mother actually left Limpopo Department of Health. From 2018, the trust was buying properties in premium locations in South Africa. In 2018, they bought a mansion for 32 million rands in Camps Bay. In 2020, they bought another mansion for 75 million rands in Bantry Bay. There's no year specified here. They bought a Pecanwood estate in the northwest. This is a property in Pecanwood estate for 13.5 million. They bought a property for 13 million in Hurlingham Sandton in Johannesburg. They bought a 16 million stand in Oxford Avenue in Sandton. Then there's a Hyde Park villa which cost 25 million rands. And that Hyde Park villa was actually profiled on Top Billing in 2019, and you can still find the video on YouTube, right? Then they bought 2 beachfront homes at Zimbali Country Club, 35 million rands each. We're going to talk more about those Palito beachfront homes. 35 million rands, 70 million for a stand in Sandton, a different stand, 30 million for 2 adjoining flats in Sea Point. The total value of the real estate empire of the MHR Trust is 310 million. So for me, when I think about all of the properties and the property valuation that I just spoke about, it seems to me that there's much more that he got than the 310 million, because he wasn't just getting money and buying property. Those properties would have to be furnished. There's a whole lifestyle that he would have to be living. There's a whole hush karimama that he has. He's got a serious hosh karimama. Serious hosh karimama, this man, who hangs around with other hosh karimamas who you've seen before. So there's all of that, right? So far, I think you are beginning to get that Morgan Maumela is somebody who's been serious in the hoshkari behavior in Gauteng and in South Africa. But you may be wondering, okay, but what's the connection to Benjani Chauke? So on page 161, something happens right at the end. Page 161, let me go there. Something happens right at the end of the chapter, right? So Jeff Wicks says the following: I visited one of his Sandton properties and found a construction site. The multi-story house was clearly going to be massive. I could see as much from the satellite imagery. From the roadway, most of the structure was hidden behind 4-meter-high walls, and the verge was lined with cars as builders and tilers bit a path in and out. I parked a distance away and watched. A black BMW X5 slipped onto an available berth. 2 men in suits got out and walked into the property. 10 minutes later, they returned to the car and left. I hastily scribbled down the registration and sent it to someone who could access Inatis, the National Traffic Database. Turned out, the black BMW was registered to the police and allocated to the Presidential Protection Detail. Turned out, says Jeff Wicks on page 161 of this book, the black BMW was registered to the police and allocated to the Presidential Protection Detail. So Jeff Wicks tells us that he saw this black BMW, it's allocated to the Presidential Detail, and he then makes a connection on page 166, where he says this started indicating the connection with Benjani Chauke, because that's probably a vehicle that was being used by Benjani Chauke. He doesn't speculate that the president was the one in that vehicle, right? And Penjani Chauke is somebody who's connected to President Ramaphosa through the CR17 campaign. He's been reported to be his fixer. He probably deserves his own episode. He's been also implicated in trying to help with the Phala Phala investigations. There's a lot on him. He ran for the NEC of the ANC in the last conference, didn't succeed, but he's one of the people who's viewed to have large amounts of money, who's viewed to be very close to the president, and is somebody who, according to Jeff Wicks, has a strong relationship with Hangwani Morgan Maumela. According to Jeff Wicks, Morgan and Penjani are neighbors in Hyde Park. They have such a strong relationship that Penjani, according to the book, has stayed at the home of Morgan and actually has been so relaxed that he was there with slippers, with his bathrobe on, and he was chilling there. They were having a good time. So in the complex, one of them has the stand number 3 and the other is actually staying on stand number 6. That's how tight they are. They're neighbors, and both of them are staying very close to the president's own house. So that's what the book is suggesting. It's not me saying it. It's Jeff Wicks. It's the News 24. It's what the research is indicating. So it seems there's a very strong relationship with Morgan and Penjani Chauke. And Penjani Chauke was, according to the book, using the president's vehicle or vehicles within the presidential detail to go to the stand. Why was he going to the stand? I think the committee needs to call him in. I think the commission needs to call him in. What is their relationship? Because these things are all connected. Now, there's a connection between Vusi Matlala and Morgan Maumela. And to be honest, it seems as if Vusi was just the muscle. He was the guy who was involved or implicated or would be tasked with dealing with people who are giving these guys problems. That's what it looks like his role was. All of the allegations around him seem as if he was the muscle. So we've been hearing a lot about the company Cat Protection Services. This was the security company being run by Vusi Matlala. This is the company which was raided by the police and weapons were seized. Weapons, some of which were then linked to several murders. All of the murders we've been hearing about and attempted murders, right? Attempted murders of the taxi boss, Joe Sibanyoni, attempted murders of Tebogo Tobejane, murders of DJ, is it Vetis, who was also, killed, and others, right? So this company seems to have been one of the companies which was providing the weapons and sometimes providing the manpower. Overall, Morgan Maumela seems to have been very slick and savvy, based on the fact that there's virtually no footprint of him online. However, in 2017, he made one mistake. And that mistake may be the mistake which will continue to haunt him for a very long time. What was that mistake? It's a mistake that linked him to Vusi Matlala and suggested the nature of their relationship. In 2017, Morgan Maumela was registered as a director for Cat Protection Services right after the company was registered. A few days later, the same notorious company which has been implicated in all of this hoshkari behavior. I think he realized his mistake because he was quickly removed, or he removed himself as a director within 4 days. But the damage was done and the paper trail was now there and established. Not only is there that paper trail, yesterday there were reports that Begitele and Vusi Matlala actually had a meeting at the Zimbali Lodge home of Morgan Maumela, the same one that I mentioned earlier. The meeting happened on the 18th of March, 2025, few weeks after General Mkonazi had gone to Parliament and a month before the 360 million tender was cancelled. So it seems as if News 24 has been getting a lot of information, and maybe they're getting it from the general. I don't know where they're getting it from, but whoever they're getting it from has got the tea, has got the coffee, has got the biscuits, has got the whole English breakfast all set up. So WhatsApp messages that were obtained by News 24 revealed that Maumela gave codes, gate entry codes, to Vusi Matlala. And then Vusi Matlala then sent those codes to Begitele to get into the complex on that 18th of March. So they asked him some questions, and Maumela said he had no knowledge of the meeting. He said, I'm not involved in those police things that are happening. I was never part of any meeting that was held. You can check my records. Please, Mr. Maumela, can you go to Sakina Kamwendo? Please, man. Go to Sakina. Or if you're scared of Sakina, go to Caesar Mpofu Walls. Just go to Caesar Mpofu Walls. He's not going to choke you. He's going to ask you some simple questions. You can answer, and we can get to know your side of the story. You don't have to go to the commission. Just go to the SMWX experience. Hey. Go there, man. Go somewhere. If you don't want to go to Sakina, go to SMWX. So he said that he could explain. He said, I can explain to you how it happened. There was, if you remember, on the 18th of March, a soccer match. Pirates were playing. He said that Vusi Matlala had been in Durban as a football spectator and wanted to book a hotel at Zimbali. I assisted him in getting a code to go inside and book the hotel. I don't know whether he booked, Maumela added. And then he denied having given Matlala the run of either of his Zimbali properties. So News 24 went and checked all that stuff, and they told him, listen, the Pirates game had been played on the 16th in Joburg, and that he had given Matlala access on the Monday. Then he said, no, maybe it was Chiefs. And then they checked. Chiefs had played Richards Bay FC in Umlazi, Durban on the 16th as well, 2 days later. And when he was asked to check his records, he said, my messages from March have been deleted. Baba, you're deleting WhatsApp messages. You're that type of a fellow. Messages set to disappear. What kind of dodgy stuff are you doing if all of your messages are set to disappear or are being deleted? Also, why are you deleting messages when Kwanaz is coming? Why are you deleting messages when Commission wants messages? What are you fiddling there? What are you hiding, sir? So they also asked Begicele, and Begicele said he had a meeting with Matlala at a house and not a hotel. But he said, I don't know who owns the house. And then he said, I don't know Maumela. We don't have a relationship. So regardless of Begicele's version, we now know that Vusi Matlala and Morgan Maumela are like this. They are like this. Then the question is why? Why? Because now we're clear. There's a relationship between Vusi Matlala and Maumela. There's a relationship between Begicele and Matlala. And I think the relationship with Begicele and Matlala is quite extensive and requires a lot of explanation. But as it pertains to the Don Corleone, the Horse Curry Don of the Tembisa Hospital saga, it seems that Vusi Matlala was providing a function, and that function was muscle. Because Babita didn't just die by accident. There were people who were angry that she had blocked the payments. There were people who were trying to send a message that you can't block our payments. And there were people who were actually trying to kill somebody who could link them to everything. So as things stand, we don't know which people those are. But it's beginning to look like there's some clues as to why Babita had to die, which is the subject matter of this book. You can get it. It's out now at Exclusive Books and a lot of bookstores. You can get it and read it for yourself. I think it's an important book to read. And Jeff Wicks, I want to salute you for having done this work, having told Babita's story. There's so many other people who've lost their lives as a result of trying to expose Hoshkari behavior in the various municipalities and state-owned enterprises. What you've done here is given us a slice of what is happening in the Hoshkari industrial complex. You've exposed some of the Hoshkari behavior. So salute to you. So it looks like here that we now know those things. And the media has to do a better job, really. You can't... News 24 right now is the only publication that seems to be running with the story in a big way. The other publications are really dragging their feet. They're dragging their feet. And I think it may be because this doesn't take us to Paul Mashatile's feet. It doesn't take us to Julius Malema's feet. It doesn't take us to Jacob Zuma's feet. And maybe they are now having cold feet. But please, can you tell us all that you know about Morgan Maumela and Benjani Chauke and all of these characters? By the way, I recorded last on Wednesday. And between Wednesday and today, which is Friday, there's been a development. And the development is that Morgan Maumela's properties have been seized by the Asset Forfeiture Unit. 4 Lamborghinis, a variety of cars. But there's no video. There's no footage. Nothing is being shown. Nothing is being publicly revealed. And maybe that's yet to happen. But maybe it'll also be kept under the wraps to reduce the volume on this story. Remember, there's something called manufacturing consent. With Edwin Sodi, they invited journalists to come and see the cars, come and see the house. And we were all able to see and say, oh, so Sodi was living like this. How come with Morgan Maumela we're not getting the same thing? Is it because of all of his connections? Is it because of all of his connections? I don't know. But it's very weird. On a Thursday at about 10 p.m., that's when the statement came out that the asset forfeiture unit had taken these properties worth about 300 something million. So that's one of the developments.
Hearings and anti-corruption protests. Vusimuzi Kat Matlala was already well versed in the language of violence and shadow deals. His criminal journey began in the early 2000s, where whispers in the townships of Gauteng placed him at the center of a series of cash-in-transit heists and house robberies. He was quick, elusive, and brutal, earning the nickname Cat for his ability to vanish and strike without warning. Amidst institutional weaknesses and a rising organized crime ecosystem, Matlala was building his network, brick by bloody brick. He knew the value of loyalty, fear, and most of all, connections. But it was a meeting years later that would turn his story from gangster to government-linked kingpin. That man was Hangwani Morgan Maumela, a politically connected businessman with ties to procurement offices across Gauteng, especially Tembisa Hospital. Actually, he is the niece of Cyril Ramaphosa from the previous marriage. Together, they forged a deadly alliance, one that would span ghost companies, corrupted public officials, and a healthcare looting spree that would eventually claim lives, including one of South Africa's bravest whistleblowers. By the late 2010 ES, Maumela and Vusi had perfected a strategy to loot from the public purse, particularly from the already strained health sector. Using a sophisticated network of over 200 front companies, many of which were registered under associates, lovers, or employees, they rigged the RFQ, request for quotation system. They'd submit quotes from multiple controlled entities to guarantee one of their companies would win. One notorious transaction revealed by investigative journalists showed just how inflated these deals were. A basic medical supply costing 3.20 per rand unit was billed to Tembisa Hospital at 152 rand per unit. One order involving 8,000 units should have cost just 25,600 rand, but was instead billed at over 1.2 million rand, a markup of over 4,500%. Their scheme funded a lifestyle that shocked even the country's elite. Vusi and Maumela purchased homes in Sandhurst and Camps Bay, two of South Africa's most expensive neighborhoods. They drove 4 million rand luxury vehicles, flew in private jets, and hosted parties where money rained like confetti. But their reign of theft was not going unnoticed. In 2021, a courageous woman named Babita Deokaran, acting as the Chief Director of Financial Accounting at the Gauteng Department of Health, noticed irregularities in Tembisa Hospital's procurement books. Suspicious of the massive payouts going to obscure companies, including those tied to Maumela and allegedly Vusi, she ordered 70 million rand in payments to be frozen. I made a video about this months ago. You can watch it at the end of this video. On the morning of the 23rd of August 2021, Babita was shot multiple times outside her home in Mondeor, Johannesburg. The assassins fled, leaving behind a nation shocked by the execution of a civil servant who had merely done her job. Several suspects were arrested, and links to Maumela emerged almost immediately. Although no official indictment named Vusi, rumors among police insiders and local journalists painted a damning picture. Not long after Babita's death, the public started hearing about Vusi's other life, one far darker than his tender schemes. In late 2021, Vusi allegedly shot and killed his best friend Kosi in Mamelodi, reportedly over a debt that Matlala refused to pay. This murder, though never officially connected to Vusi, became folklore in Pretoria's underworld, where friends turned enemies ended up in coffins, not courtrooms. The death of Kosi marked a shift. Vusi was no longer just a fraudster cloaked in Versace and armed with spreadsheets. He was now a man feared by other criminals, a kingpin with a kill list. By 2023, Vusi Cat had transcended his criminal roots. He was now a businessman, a philanthropist, even a rumored advisor to high-ranking police officials. He had also become romantically entangled with multiple women, including Cordelia Kabeng, a young woman from a poor background whom he pampered with private jet trips and blue light convoys, and later with the actress Tebogo Tobajan. But behind the lavish Instagram stories and red carpet events, the blood trail never stopped. In August 2022, Vusi allegedly attempted to assassinate Joe Sibagnoni, known in the underworld as Joe Ferrari. Joe survived, but the attempt marked Vusi's public entrance into the domain of contract killings, an identity he would soon embrace. Behind the curtain, Vusi was also allegedly doing business with the infamous Jonathan Mswazi Msibi, a feared criminal overlord with reach across Gauteng and Mpumalanga. Upon Mswazi's death, Vusi was rumored to have taken up the mantle South Africa's new John Wick, feared not just by rivals, but also by state officials who were said to protect him. It is around this time that Vusi began courting influence at the highest levels of the South African police service. Photos emerged of him gifting a black Mercedes-Benz to Brigadier Julius Mkhwanazi, head of the Ekurhuleni Metro Police Department. Others claimed he had high-ranking protection from generals, commissioners, and even cabinet ministers. In November 2024, law enforcement agencies, including the Hawks, SAPS, and SARS, raided Durban businesswoman Shaun Kaiser's La Lucia mansion and seized over 40 firearms. At the time, Ms. McKaiser publicly denied any involvement. However, Ian Cameron, chair of the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Police, later disclosed that the weapons in question were registered to CAT VIP Protection, a private security firm owned by Vusumuzi Cat Matlala. If ordinary citizens illegally stored firearms at an unregistered premise, not fit for firearm storage, they would face criminal charges and have their weapons confiscated. Yet in this case, all seized guns were returned to the security company, and nearly 2 months later, parliamentary questions remain unanswered. This raises questions about regulatory oversight, potential impunity, and political influence, shielding a company under serious suspicion.
No, it was quite interesting. It was Monday during a press briefing when I said that I mentioned the wrong Vusi Musi in terms of firearms that were illegally stored at one of her properties. They were illegally stored. They were not meant to be there. I just by mistake said the wrong Vusi Musi. So I said Vusi Musi Matlala instead of Vusi Musi Kaba, and that's that. The point is there were severe irregularities, transgression of both the CIRA regulations in terms of private security regulations and also the Firearm Controls Act.
By early 2024, Vusi Muzi Cat Matlala had evolved from a shadowy tenderpreneur into a name whispered in fear across Gauteng's criminal and political landscape. He was no longer merely stealing from the state, he was executing power plays with bullets, and the line between boardroom and battlefield had all but vanished. His transition from fraudster to feared assassin was now undeniable. The money had elevated him to society's upper crust, but what truly cemented his authority was a string of brutal hits, each one more audacious than the last. In late 2022, South Africa woke up to shocking news. DJ Somebody, the popular Amapiano star and entrepreneur, had been shot dead in a hail of bullets in Johannesburg. The murder sent tremors across the entertainment industry, but underneath the mourning and tributes, a darker narrative was forming. Whispers began to circulate that DJ Somebody had close ties with a controversial figure in Gauteng's underworld, Joe Sibagnoni, better known as Joe Ferrari. Months earlier, in August 2022, Joe had survived an attempted assassination at the Centurion Golf Estate gates, an attempt allegedly orchestrated by Vusi in what many believed was his final test to prove himself to the late Mswazi Mzibi. DJ Somebody's crime: loyalty to Ferrari. According to underworld chatter and leaked WhatsApp voice notes, Matlala was growing paranoid. Anyone connected to Ferrari was seen as a threat. Somebody's murder was said to be a strategic hit, eliminating an ally of a rival and sending a brutal message to the Pretoria underworld. In a grotesque display of arrogance and psychological warfare, Matlala and his wife, Tsakani TK Baloyi, attended DJ Somebody's funeral. They arrived with multiple bodyguards, dressed in black designer suits, flanked by men in dark sunglasses. The next body fell in early 2024. Alf Rams, once a close associate and friend of Cat, made the fatal mistake of asking for what was his, 2 million rand, money he had lent to Matlala months prior. Alf was a known face in Mamelodi's nightlife and a minor player in local tender businesses. He believed his closeness to Kat offered him protection. He was wrong. In February 2024, Alf was found dead in his car, shot execution style in Pretoria East. No valuables were stolen, no arrests were made. But insiders knew it was a message. Loyalty to Kat meant silence. Asking questions even about your own money was treason. But Matlala's ambitions weren't just personal, they were territorial. In Mamelodi, the township was dominated by a gang known as Boko Haram, a violent extortion group that controlled protection rackets, drug routes, and housing developments. At the time, the group was led by Zoro, a charismatic yet ruthless figure respected by both the streets and elements within local law enforcement. Vusi, looking to expand his empire, allegedly began infiltrating Boko Haram in mid-2023. His strategy? Divide and conquer. He built relationships with discontented lieutenants, killed 5 senior Boko Haram members, and used their deaths to ignite internal chaos. Suspicion grew, factions formed, and then, in late 2023, the unthinkable happened. Zoro was assassinated. Sources claim that Kat ordered the hit personally. The bullet that tore through Zoro was the death knell of Boko Haram's old guard. Within days, Matlala had absorbed the gang, rebranded it, and placed himself at the head. He wasn't just a criminal anymore, he was a warlord. His command of Boko Haram gave him access to extortion networks in Mamelodi and Ekurhuleni, informants inside the Ekurhuleni Metro Police Department, arms and drug routes reaching Mpumalanga and Limpopo. And with the gang now under his thumb, Kat began wearing the title whispered in hushed tones across townships, the John Wick of Mamelodi. I once made a video about this, you can watch it at the end of this video. Vusi's rise was not powered by strategy alone. His partner, Tsakani TK Baloyi, began to play a disturbing role in this empire of blood. Initially introduced to Vusi by actress Tebogo Tobajan, TK had become his confidant, lover, and alleged co-conspirator. Consumed by obsession and jealousy, TK allegedly asked Vusi to kill Tebogo Tobajan. By early 2025, Vusimuzi Kat Matlala was no longer just a feared gangster or a tender tycoon. He had become a national security threat, protected not just by his own ruthlessness, but by powerful individuals in government and law enforcement. His reach was no longer confined to township alleys or hospital corridors. It extended all the way into Parliament, SAP's headquarters, and even the office of the police minister. The collapse of justice was no accident. It was bought. One bribe, one promotion, one assassination at a time. In June 2024, a bombshell tender was awarded by the South African Police Service, SAPS, a contract valued at 360 million rand for health services across several police districts. The winning bidder, Medicare 24 Swine District, a company linked directly to Vusimuzi Matlala, despite being under investigation for procurement fraud at Tembisa Hospital tax evasion, possible links to the murder of Babita Deokaran, attempted murder charges involving Tebogo Tobajan. Vusi's company still received the contract. By December 2024, SAPS had already paid out 50 million rand of the contract's value. It wasn't until April 2025, following internal audits and external pressure, that the contract was cancelled due to fraud, fronting, and misrepresentation. But by then, the money was gone. In July 2025, KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Mkhwanazi broke ranks and delivered an explosive public statement. In front of media cameras and legal observers, Mkhwanazi accused Police Minister Senzo Deputy Police Commissioner Shadrack Sibia, a known Vusi associate named Brown Magotsi, of orchestrating the disbanding of a critical SAPS task team, the Political Killings Task Team, to shield Vusi from arrest and preserve his SAPS contract. Mkhwanazi presented evidence taken from Matlala's own WhatsApp messages exposing a meeting arranged between Senzo and Sibia by Brown, instructions sent to SAPS officers to dissolve the task team investigating Vusi, a follow-up message confirming, as we speak they are bringing all the dockets to Sibia. Days later, a payment of 111,000 rand was made from Matlala's Medicare 24 account to an account allegedly controlled by Magotsi. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just bribery. It was state capture, executed in real time.
The evidence has been found in the cell phone of Mr. Vusimus, also known as Cat Matala, which shows the communication between Mr. Brown Mohoti and the Minister of Police, Mr. Senzo Mchunu. As I said, this was the beginning of the closure of the political task team. I'll try to outline some sequence of events. I had said the team left for Gauteng to go and assist organized crime in Gauteng. There was a shooting incident that had occurred in April 2024, where Mr. Swart, a QTech employee, was fatally shot while entering the company premises. QTech has been a long-standing service provider to Transnet. Shortly after the incident, 3 suspects, including a warrant officer, a South African Police Service warrant officer, a detective Dau Pule, were arrested in Johannesburg. During the arrest, weapons that were used in this matter, which was an AK-47 and a pistol, along with cell phones, were confiscated. So they conducted a ballistic test in order to check whether these firearms were linked with that matter and many other matters perhaps that will have occurred in the country. On the 30th December 2024, the ballistic expert issued a ballistic report which linked these firearms not only with the murder of Mr. Swart, but these firearms were linked with a number of high-profile cases. And these cases include very high-profile South African artists that were murdered in Gauteng, which occurred dating back as far as 2021. I'm not going to mention them, but we have them on record.
Although he had been replaced as Minister of Police in 2024, Becky's name soon entered the spotlight again. A July 2025 investigation by News 24 revealed that Becky had stayed twice in Matlala's private luxury penthouse at the capital in Menlyn Main, Pretoria, during January 2025. The penthouse was leased in Vusi's name until April 2025. Around the same time, the 50 million rand SAPS contract payout was underway. Becky claimed that he didn't know Vusi personally and said there was nothing untoward about the stay. But critics weren't convinced. Was this simply a case of a generous acquaintance? Or was it another example of Vusi buying silence, access and protection? Among the most chilling indicators of Vusi's impunity was his brazen gifting of luxury vehicles to top-ranking officers. Photos circulated of Brigadier Julius Mkhwanazi, head of the Ekurhuleni Metro Police Department, receiving a black Mercedes-Benz, a gift from Matlala himself. According to insiders, the car was a reward for keeping operations quiet in Kempton Park and Mamelodi, both hotspots for extortion and gang activity. In return, Vusi's vehicles were never stopped. His convoys, often with blue lights, moved through red zones without resistance. He hosted private parties where officers were hired as bodyguards, dressed in official gear. Police uniforms were no longer symbols of law, they were symbols of loyalty to CAT. By July 2025, the story was too big to ignore. President Cyril Ramaphosa, speaking from Brazil, called Mkhwanazi's allegations a matter of grave national security. Opposition parties demanded a judicial commission of inquiry into SAPS procurement and political interference, the suspension of Police Minister Senzo and Deputy Commissioner Sibia, full disclosure of payments made to Medicare 24, protection for whistleblowers like Mkhwanazi, whose life is now at risk. In the aftermath of the Babita Deokaran assassination and the exposure of 1 billion rand in suspicious transactions tied to the Tembisa hospital, pressure began mounting on Vusi and his co-conspirators, most notably Hangwani Morgan Mamela. Sources within Gauteng Health Administration began leaking more files. Journalists were circling again. Civil society groups were threatening legal action to reopen frozen investigations that had mysteriously disappeared from SAPS and SIU databases. Then in early 2025, a fire broke out at Tembisa Hospital. Entire floors of archived procurement data and financial records were reduced to ash. SAPS initially cited an electrical fault, but internal whistleblowers and security personnel who spoke anonymously to journalists alleged otherwise. The fire wasn't random, it was strategic. They took the 3 RD floor archive rooms first. The Office of the Public Protector opened an investigation in February 2025, but found itself stonewalled by missing access logs and deleted internal communications.
Awake at night is how criminal syndicates are able to garner politicians and they run the country. And that is in fact what I think General Mkhwanazi is alluding to. He puts a test before all of us to say, when we look at even our judges and their ethical leadership in the correctional services and our political leadership, now is a time for us not to have a conversation about it because it is having consequences. For the citizen who's sitting at home, 64 people being killed every day, and knowing very well that political killings are on the rise, and we certainly are burying political leaders, for the state to have disbanded the program is a betrayal of justice, and they must be held accountable.
Africa got flipped. By who and what turning it right side up reveals about the true origin of ancient Egyptian civilization. Pay attention. The Nile flows south to north from deep within Africa out to the Mediterranean. And when you follow it upstream, you don't start in Egypt. You start in Sudan. But it wasn't always called Sudan. It was called Nubia, the true source of Egyptian civilization. Sudan has more pyramids than Egypt, older ones built by the Nubians, the pharaohs who ruled Egypt long before the stories you know. So why does the world see Egypt as the start? Because modern maps were made from a European point of view, with Europe on top and Britain at the center. But North isn't natural. It's simply a perspective, a choice. Ancient Africans never saw Europe as the top. To them, the source of life flowed from the south, not the north. What we've been told is the sub-Saharan bottom of Africa was, for thousands of years, the top of the known world, long before the dawn of European civilization.